Number 1. The Gray Fossil Site. In May of the year 2000, a Tennessee Department of Transportation road crew was widening State Route 75 near the small town of Gray in the northeastern corner of the state. It was ordinary work, the kind of grading and cutting that happens on highways every day. Then, the excavators bit into something strange. The soil turned black and greasy, rich with old organic matter, and it did not behave like the clay road crews expect. A state geologist looked closer and recognized something in the spoil that stopped the project cold. Bone. Fossil bone, and a great deal of it. What the crew had sliced into was a Miocene sinkhole. Millions of years ago, water had eaten a cavity down into the ancient carbonate bedrock, and that pit slowly filled with fine sediment, trapping animals as it went. The deposit is somewhere between 4.5 and 7 million years old, a warm, humid window into a Tennessee that no longer exists. And here's the decision that makes this story remarkable. Rather than pave over it, the Department of Transportation rerouted the entire highway around the deposit. A road project became a rescue. East Tennessee State University moved in, built a research program, and eventually raised a museum directly over the site. What they pulled out rewrote the map of the ancient world. The flagship find is a small, extinct red panda called Pristinellurus bristoli, one of the most complete red panda fossils ever discovered anywhere. Consider what that means. Red pandas live in Asia today. Yet here was one buried under Appalachia, alongside tapirs, short-faced bears, rhinos, saber-toothed cats, alligators, and camels. Dozens of individual tapirs came out of the black clay, along with frogs, salamanders, snakes, turtles, fish, leaves, and even insects, all preserved because the oxygen-starved mud refused to let them rot. The picture that emerged was not Tennessee at all. It was closer to a subtropical Asian forest around a quiet pond. The site runs several acres wide and more than 30 meters deep, and after 2 decades of digging led by paleontologist Stephen Wallace, only a fraction has been excavated. So how did so many animals end up here? The mainstream view is a slow, patient pond trap, swallowing the unlucky one by one. Others suspect sudden sinkhole collapses. A few argue the pit refilled and reopened many times over. But the question that lingers is simple. If a routine road crew found this by accident, what else is sitting beneath the asphalt? Number 2. The Trafalgar Square Hippos. Stand in the center of London, in the great tourist plaza with its stone column and its restless pigeons, and you are standing on top of an Ice Age river. Central London sits on gravels laid down by an ancient version of the Thames, and those gravels have a habit of swallowing giants. Across the 1800s and 1900s, as workmen dug foundations around Trafalgar Square and the streets nearby, they kept turning up enormous bones. The bones belonged to animals that should feel impossible in England. Hippopotamus, straight-tusked elephant, lion. The key deposits date to a warm phase called the Ipswichian, the last interglacial, around 125,000 years ago. Britain then was warmer than it is today, warm enough that Hippopotamus amphibius, the same species that wallows in African rivers now, lived in the Thames at the very heart of what would become London. Above them moved Paleoloxodon antiquus, the straight-tusked elephant, a beast standing over 4 meters at the shoulder, larger than any elephant alive. Lions, aurochs, red deer, and rhinoceros rounded out a fauna that ranged as far north as Yorkshire. The bones surface in old river sand and gravel, sometimes rounded and worn from being rolled along an ancient current, sometimes remarkably fresh. Many were rescued by workmen and handed to Victorian geologists, and a great number now rest in the collections of the Natural History Museum. The contrast is almost dizzying. Beneath the plaza laid out in the 1840s, beneath the traffic and the crowds, lie the remains of hippos that basked in a Mediterranean-like England. Dating methods based on uranium and on the slow chemical change of amino acids confirm that Ipswichian age. There is one more haunting detail. During this particular interglacial, Britain appears to have had no humans at all. The island was an empty Eden of hippos and elephants, cut off by high seas with no one to see it. As the climate cooled again, the hippos vanished, replaced by mammoths and woolly rhinos adapted to the returning cold. Why were tropical animals here in the first place? The mainstream answer is straightforward range expansion during a warm spell. Older antiquarians once mistook the bones for evidence of a great flood, and skeptics still caution that river-transported bones can mislead us about who really lived where. Whatever the truth, the ground beneath one of the most famous squares on Earth remembers a world of hippos. Number 3. The Ganzhou and Heyuan roadwork dinosaur eggs. In southern China, the red sandstone basins around Ganzhou in Jiangxi and Heyuan in Guangdong hold one of the strangest ongoing situations in all of paleontology. Construction crews there keep unearthing dinosaur eggs again and again, so often that it has become almost routine. The city of Heyuan holds a Guinness World Record for the largest collection of dinosaur eggs on the planet, with more than 10,000 of them housed in its museum. The first of those eggs were found in 1996 by children playing on a construction site. It did not stop there. In 2015, construction workers using dynamite to clear ground in Ganzhou blasted open a clutch of fossilized dinosaur eggs. In 2019, school children in Heyuan reportedly spotted eggs exposed at yet another building site. The eggs are late Cretaceous, between roughly 66 and 89 million years old, and many of them belong to Oviraptorosaurs, beaked and feathered theropods that brooded their nests much of the way birds do today. The soft red sandstone weathers and breaks easily, which is exactly why the eggs keep surfacing whenever the ground is disturbed. Ganzhou in particular has become a global capital of these dinosaurs, producing a parade of new species with names like Banjilong, Ganzhousaurus, Jiangxisaurus, and Tongtianlong. That last one has a story worth pausing on. Tongtianlong limosus, described in 2016, means roughly muddy dragon on the road to heaven. Its skeleton was exposed by dynamite at a construction site, and the animal was frozen in a desperate pose, neck arched, limbs splayed, head lifted, as if it had died struggling to pull itself free of the mud that entombed it. A creature's final moment blasted back into daylight by a demolition crew. The eggs themselves are often preserved in beautiful ring-shaped and spiral clutches, the pattern left by a parent circling the nest as it laid. Some retain microscopic shell structure, letting scientists study the pores through which the embryos once breathed. Under Chinese law, fossils are state property, and finds are supposed to be reported to heritage authorities, though the sheer frequency of discovery makes that a constant challenge. Why are these egg beds so dense? The mainstream reads them as repeated nesting colonies returning to the same ground year after year. Some argue floods concentrated eggs from a wider area. A few suspect a single catastrophic season buried them all at once. Number 4. Boxgrove Man. Near Chichester, in West Sussex, a commercial quarry called a Mise Earthen Pit was chewing through gravel and sand when it exposed something no one expected. Buried beneath later sediments lay an ancient land surface, a preserved slice of a coastal plain that had sat untouched for nearly 500,000 years. Through the 1980s and 1990s, archaeologists led by Mark Roberts of University College London excavated that surface, and what they found there is among the most intimate portraits of deep time ever recovered. In 1993, they found a human shin bone. In 1995, 2 lower teeth turned up in the same layer. The remains belong to Homo heidelbergensis, an ancestor of both Neanderthals and ourselves, and they are around 480,000 to 500,000 years old. They are the oldest human remains ever found in Britain. The shin bone is thick and powerful, suggesting an individual perhaps 1.8 meters tall and heavily built, and it carries the gnaw marks of a carnivore that scavenged the body after death. What makes Boxgrove extraordinary is not just the bones, but the frozen moments around them. Thousands of flint hand axes lay scattered across the old ground, many in mint condition, dropped exactly where they were made. By refitting the waste flakes together like a three-dimensional puzzle, archaeologists reconstructed individual napping sessions, the precise sequence of blows struck by a single person 500,000 years ago. Nearby lay butchered bones of horse, rhinoceros, red deer, and bear, marked by stone tools. One horse shoulder blade even bears what looks like a spear impact wound, hinting that these people hunted big game rather than merely scavenging it. Scratches on the teeth suggest a right-handed individual processing food with tools held at the mouth. All of this survived because the fine waterlogged sediments at the foot of an old chalk cliff sealed the surface almost perfectly. and all of it depended on a working quarry stripping away the overburden to reveal it. Specialists like Simon Parfitt sifted through the enormous animal assemblage to reconstruct the environment. How advanced were these people really? The mainstream view now grants them skilled cooperative hunting. An older model insisted they only scavenged what others killed. And the deepest questions about how they thought and whether they spoke remain wide open, pulled from the ground by a gravel digger. Number 5. The Bernissart Iguanodons. In 1878, coal miners in the Belgian village of Bernissart were working the Santa Barbe pit 322 meters underground when their tools struck something that made no sense. The rock gave way to a body of clay streaked with fool's gold, and inside that clay were long shapes the miners took for fossilized tree trunks, or perhaps some gold-bearing seam. They were neither. They were dinosaurs, an entire graveyard of them, waiting 1,000 feet below the surface. The miners had cut into a natural collapse structure, a sinkhole filled with early Cretaceous clay from the Barremian age, around 125 million years ago, that cut straight down through the coal seams. Inside it lay at least 38 iguanodon skeletons, many of them articulated and nearly complete. This was unprecedented. Until then, dinosaurs were known mostly from scraps and fragments. Now scientists had dozens of whole animals of a single kind. Two forms were present: the large and robust Iguanodon bernissartensis, reaching around 10 meters and 3 tons, and a smaller, slighter species later renamed Mantellosaurus. The excavation was supervised by Louis de Pauw, who encased the fragile bones in plaster to haul them up the shaft. Then a young engineer named Louis Dollo took over and spent decades studying and mounting them at the museum in Brussels. Dollo stood them upright, propped like giant kangaroos on a tripod of hind legs and tail, an image that shaped how the public pictured dinosaurs for generations. It was later corrected to a more horizontal posture, and the famous thumb spike, which Gideon Mantell had once stuck on the animal's nose like a horn, was finally put in its proper place, all thanks to these complete skeletons. The iguanodons still stand today in a glass gallery in Brussels, though keeping them there has been a century-long battle against pyrite disease, the slow chemical decay of the fool's gold in their bones. How did so many gather in one place? The mainstream view is a pitfall that claimed animals one at a time over many years. Others imagine a single herd caught in one catastrophe. A few have wondered about a predator trap. The mine flooded in 1881 and the work ended, but by then, the dead had already been raised from the deep. Number 6. The Snowmastodon Reservoir Dig. In October of 2010, a bulldozer operator named Jesse Steele was enlarging the dam of the Ziegler Reservoir, high in the Colorado Rockies near Snowmass Village, when his blade turned up bones that did not belong to any modern animal. They belonged to a Columbian mammoth. And that was only the beginning. Almost at once, American mastodons began emerging from the dark lake mud, and it became clear that the reservoir crew had opened one of the richest Ice Age sites ever found at high altitude. The Denver Museum of Nature and Science, led by scientists Kirk Johnson and Ian Miller, launched an emergency operation they nicknamed the Snowmastodon Project. The site was an old lake basin at around 2,700 meters elevation, dammed long ago by a glacier's moraine, and its sediments held a record stretching from about 140,000 to 45,000 years ago, a full swing of the climate from warm to cold and back. But there was a catch. This was a construction site with a deadline, and the water would return. Science had to race the reservoir. Over 2 frantic field seasons and only about 69 days of actual digging, the team recovered more than 35,000 bones from at least 50 species of vertebrates. Columbian mammoths and mastodons came out alongside a giant longhorned bison called Bison latifrons, Jefferson's ground sloth, and deer. And because the lake mud stayed wet and starved of oxygen, it preserved far more than bone. Insects, wood, pollen, and even whole leaves survived, giving researchers a layer-by-layer diary of how the mountain climate shifted across tens of thousands of years, a record that lines up neatly with ice cores and deep-sea sediments. Hundreds of volunteers and scientists worked shoulder to shoulder, sometimes as the reservoir's water level was carefully managed around them, until construction had to resume and the basin was sealed again beneath the water. This is salvage paleontology at its most dramatic, knowledge pulled from the ground against a ticking clock. Why did so many animals accumulate here? The mainstream answer is a natural lake that trapped the unwary over millennia. Some point to soft, miring margins, others wonder about occasional mass deaths. The reservoir is full again now, holding its secrets under cold water. Number 7. The Zigong Dashanpu Dinosaur Graveyard. The city of Zigong in China's Sichuan province made its fortune on salt and natural gas, drilling deep into the earth for the resources that fueled the region. Then, in 1972, with major excavation beginning around 1979, work tied to a gas project cut into something far older than any gas field. It was a bone bed, a dense tangle of dinosaur skeletons from the Middle Jurassic, roughly 160 to 170 million years ago. And that age is precisely what made it priceless. Middle Jurassic dinosaurs are rare across the whole world. The rocks of that age are poorly exposed almost everywhere, leaving a frustrating gap in the story of dinosaur evolution. Dashanpu filled that gap in spectacular fashion. Thousands of bones from many individuals lay jumbled together in what was once an ancient river channel, animals swept up and buried in the same place. Out of it came the long-necked sauropod Shunosaurus, remarkable for the bony club on the end of its tail, and its towering relative Omesaurus. There was Huayangosaurus, one of the most primitive stegosaurs known, and small plant eaters and predators besides. One of those predators earned a name that preserves the whole story. The theropod Gasosaurus constructus was named in honor of the gas and construction works that exposed the site. The animal that hunted here now carries the memory of the industrial dig that found it. In 1987, the Zigong Dinosaur Museum was built directly over the bone bed, and visitors can still see skeletons half embedded in the rock exactly where they were buried, one of the first great dinosaur museums in all of Asia. The preservation is superb, including skulls and articulated skeletons that are rare for sauropods, which has made Shunosaurus one of the best understood dinosaurs of its kind. Pterosaurs, early mammals, amphibians, fish, and turtles came out of the same rock, painting a full portrait of a lush Jurassic River valley. Why are the bones so densely piled? The mainstream reading is a flood sweeping carcasses together into a bend in the river. Some argue for a drought that killed animals crowding a shrinking waterhole. Others suspect repeated seasonal die-offs stacking the dead over time. A salt town became by accident one of the richest dinosaur sites on Earth. Number 8, the Aveley Elephants. In the county of Essex, England, the ground holds a lesson about deep time so clear that you can point straight at it. At a place called Aveley, gravel and brick earth workings in the 1960s cut into Pleistocene deposits and exposed something that looked almost staged. 2 elephants, of 2 entirely different species, stacked one directly above the other in the layered sediment with a clean band of earth between them. It is one of the most vivid records of climate change ever exposed by a quarry face. The lower skeleton is a woolly mammoth Mammuthus primigenius, an animal built for cold, open, tundra-like plains. The upper skeleton is a straight-tusked elephant, Paleoloxodon antiquus, a giant of warm temperate forests that could stand around 4 meters tall. The band of sediment between them marks the transition from a cold world to a warm one, the climate itself turning over within a single vertical slice of ground. The deposit dates broadly to around 200,000 years ago, and it became a reference section for untangling the sequence of Britain's ice ages and warm spells. Scientists connected to the Natural History Museum studied the site, and pollen trapped in the layers confirmed the great vegetation shift, from open grassland below to closed forest above. Think about what a single quarry wall preserved here. Tens of thousands of years of environmental history, 2 ecosystems separated by a change so profound that it swapped one kind of elephant for another. The gravels and brick earths of the ancient Thames system are unusually good at trapping and holding megafauna, and this particular face captured the change in a way almost no textbook diagram could match. None of it would have been seen without commercial extraction cutting a deep, clean section into the deposits. The find helped define what geologists call the Aveley interglacial in the record of the British Quaternary. Both of these elephant lineages would eventually vanish from Britain as the ice ages ground on. How should we read the sequence? The mainstream sees a single steady warming trend from mammoth times to straight-tusked elephant times. Others have argued over exactly how many separate interglacials the British record contains. A few caution that older bones can be reworked upward into younger layers, muddying the story. 2 elephants, one above the other, and deep time made suddenly startlingly real. Number 9. Hadrosaurus Foulkii. In 1858, a man named William Parker Foulkii was summering in Haddonfield, New Jersey when he heard a local story. Years earlier, workers digging in a marl pit on a nearby farm had pulled out enormous bones and thought little of them. Marl, a greenish sand rich in the mineral glauconite, was dug across New Jersey as agricultural fertilizer, and the pits routinely turned up the fossils of a vanished sea. Foulkii, intrigued, organized a careful excavation of the old pit, and what he recovered changed science forever. He unearthed a substantial, associated dinosaur skeleton dating to the late Cretaceous around 80 million years ago, when New Jersey lay along the edge of a shallow ocean. The Philadelphia anatomist Joseph Leidy studied and named it Hadrosaurus Foulkii in Foulkii's honor that same year. It was the first reasonably complete dinosaur skeleton found anywhere in the world, and it carried a revelation in its bones. Leidy noticed that the front limbs were far shorter than the hind limbs, which meant this animal could not have sprawled like a lizard. It stood and moved on 2 legs. The old picture of dinosaurs as giant crawling reptiles began to crumble. 10 years later, in 1868, the artist Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins assembled the skeleton into a standing mount at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia, the first mounted dinosaur skeleton in history. The public response was overwhelming. Crowds poured in to see the bones looming over them, and the Academy struggled to manage the numbers. American dinosaur mania was born in that hall. The skull was never found, so Hawkins gave the mount a speculative head, but it hardly mattered. People had, for the first time, stood beneath a dinosaur. Hadrosaurus was a duck-billed plant-eater with dense batteries of grinding teeth, and its discovery pulled the center of dinosaur science toward North America. It became New Jersey's official state dinosaur in 1991, and the Haddonfield site is now a National Historic Landmark. The find helped ignite the ferocious rivalry between Cope and Marsh that became known as the Bone Wars. How did so complete a skeleton survive? The mainstream view is rapid burial in a calm sea floor. Some blame the marl pit digging itself for scattering part of it. Others imagine a single carcass drifting out to sea and sinking whole into the mud. Number 10. Dinosaur Ridge. The town of Morrison, Colorado, just west of Denver, lent its name to the Morrison Formation, the most famous dinosaur-bearing rock unit in North America. It was here, back in 1877, that a schoolteacher named Arthur Lakes found gigantic bones and helped touch off the Bone Wars. The Morrison Rock is late Jurassic, about 150 million years old, and across the American West it has produced Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, Stegosaurus, and Allosaurus. But the most striking window into it was opened not by a scientist, but by a road crew. In 1937, construction of the West Alameda Parkway cut straight through a steep ridge called the Hogback, slicing the rock open and exposing fresh faces that had never seen daylight. The road cut revealed dinosaur bones, and on a nearby slope it laid bare a broad rock surface covered in footprints, around 300 of them, left by ornithopods and possibly by predatory theropods. Some of those tracks come from the younger Cretaceous Dakota Formation that also outcrops along the ridge, part of a long coastal migration route that scientists nicknamed the Dinosaur Freeway. There is a detail here that makes the site unforgettable. The uplift of the Rocky Mountains tilted these ancient layers until they stand almost vertically, so the trackway does not lie flat beneath your feet. It rises up beside the road like a wall, footprints climbing toward the sky. Road construction is directly responsible for the surface visitors touch today, and the site is now a National Natural Landmark, cared for by a nonprofit called Friends of Dinosaur Ridge, where people can lay their hands on real bones and tracks still locked in the stone. A single roadside section connects 2 great chapters of the Age of Dinosaurs, the Jurassic Morrison and the Cretaceous Dakota, one on top of the other. The Morrison Formation has yielded more complete dinosaur skeletons than almost any rock unit in the world, and here it is, cracked open by a 1930s road project. What do the tracks record? The mainstream view reads them as animals migrating along an ancient shoreline. Some see local traffic around a feeding ground. And debate still simmers over exactly which dinosaurs made which prints. A hillside became world famous the moment a road crew cut into it. Step back from these 10 stories, and a single pattern comes into focus. Construction does something that nature almost never does on its own. It digs deep, it digs fast, and it digs into fresh, unweathered rock. Gentle erosion might expose a fossil over 10,000 years. A bulldozer, a quarry, a reservoir, or a mine does it in an afternoon. And crucially, these projects slice clean vertical sections through the ground, cutting straight across the layers of time instead of nibbling at the surface. The places we dig for resources are the same places that trap the dead. Sinkholes, river channels, and lake basins are natural fossil traps. And the soft sediments that fill them, clay, marl, green sand, and gravel, are exactly the materials we quarry and mine. The coal at Bernissart, the gas at Dashanpu, the gravel at Boxgrove and Aveley, the fertilizer marl in New Jersey, each industry cut into a graveyard while chasing something else entirely. That is why so many landmark fossils were first spotted not by scientists, but by workers with machines. As cities spread and industry expands, the number of these accidental encounters only grows. Whether a find is saved or destroyed then comes down to law and to luck. China treats fossils as state property. Britain and the United States have their own frameworks. And again, it is the sharp eye of an amateur, a road foreman, a school child, a bulldozer operator that makes the difference. The lesson of all 10 sites is quietly unsettling. Deep time is not somewhere far away. It is directly beneath us, everywhere, waiting for the next blade to find it. It is worth asking why these particular sites preserve so much when most of the past simply rots away. The answer, over and over, is the chemistry of burial. At Gray and at Bernissart, oxygen-starved clay locked out the bacteria of decay, so leaves and insects and whole skeletons survived where they should have vanished. At Boxgrove and Snowmass, waterlogged sediments did the same, preserving not just bones, but wood, pollen, and even the fragile surfaces where ancient hands once worked stone. Rapid burial is the other great preserver. At Dashanpu, floods swept carcasses together and sealed them fast before scavengers and weather could scatter them. Fine-grained sediment captures astonishing detail. The pores in a dinosaur eggshell, the veins of a leaf, the print of a foot. But preservation can turn traitor. The pyrite that first caught the eyes of the Bernissart miners is now slowly destroying those same skeletons from within, a condition conservators call pyrite disease. Different ground preserves in different ways. The mineral-rich marl and green sand of New Jersey favored the fossils of a Cretaceous sea. The rolling river gravels beneath London battered their bones, but still held onto hippos and elephants. And the still mud of a mountain lake at Snowmass recorded the climate one patient layer at a time. How much of an ancient world we can reconstruct from a whole ecosystem down to a single afternoon depends entirely on how kindly the Earth chose to keep it. For all that these sites have given us, each one still guards its share of mysteries. We do not fully understand how so many animals gathered in the basins at Gray or at Snowmass, whether by slow misfortune or sudden disaster. We do not know for certain whether the people of Boxgrove hunted the great beasts around them or only scavenged what was already dead. We cannot say why dozens of iguanodons ended up together at Bernissart, or precisely which dinosaurs pressed the footprints at Dinosaur Ridge. There are simpler unknowns, too. Most of these deposits remain largely unexcavated, with only a fraction of the Gray Sinkhole or the Snowmass Basin ever touched. The species lists at Ganzhou and Dashanpu keep growing with almost every field season. The exact dating of the interglacials recorded at Aveley and beneath Trafalgar Square is still being refined. And the skull of Hadrosaurus, the animal that launched American dinosaur science, has never been found. We are left to guess what its head truly looked like. Perhaps the deepest uncertainty is how representative any of these snapshots really are. Each site is a single, frozen moment, and we do not know how much of the surrounding world it faithfully records or how much it distorts. And there is a quieter worry running underneath all of it. For every find that reaches a museum, how many more are quietly dug up, unrecognized, and lost forever beneath a new foundation? Put all of this together, and the ground beneath ordinary life starts to feel very different. There are hippos under a tourist square in London, and dinosaurs beneath a coal town in Belgium. every reservoir, every road, every quarry is a potential time machine, and we rarely know it until the blade goes in. In several places, museums now stand directly over the very spot where the discovery was made, at Zigong, at Gray, at Heyuan, so that visitors walk above the graveyard that started it all. The response has been to bring science into construction itself. More and more projects now require paleontological monitoring, a watcher on site precisely because the ground has surprised us so many times before. And these finds speak to the present as much as the past. The climate records locked in the layers at Snowmass and Aveley are the same kind of data we now use to understand the warming happening today. A red panda under Tennessee quietly rewrites what the word native even means across deep time. Most of all, these discoveries turn abstract geology into something you can stand on. Public fascination with them drives conservation and tourism, and the vigilance of amateurs remains the thin line between a find saved and a find bulldozed. The ground beneath any city, any field, any road may hold another lost world, intact and waiting. The only question is whether anyone will be looking when it finally comes to light. In the end, the great fossil hunters of these stories were not always paleontologists. They were bulldozer operators and coal miners, road crews and quarrymen, dynamite teams and school children, accidental archaeologists, everyone. They set out to build a highway or widen a dam or clear a lot, and instead they cut a doorway into a world that ended millions of years before the first human drew breath. That is the strange gift running through all 10 sites. Deep time is not distant. It is not sealed away in some far country or locked behind glass. It lies directly beneath our feet, patient and complete, holding its frozen moments intact. A dinosaur struggling in the mud. A flint napped and dropped 500,000 years ago. A herd drowned in a mountain lake. 2 elephants stacked in the Essex clay, marking the exact instant the climate turned. What we recover from that buried world depends on luck, on vigilance, and on speed. On someone recognizing bone in the spoil before the concrete is poured. The earth keeps its records with endless patience, and it surrenders them only when something cuts deep enough to reach them. The next great discovery may be one road project away, waiting under a place you pass every day. So the next time you see a construction site, its trench open and its diggers idle, consider what might be looking back up out of the ground.